Welcome to the Undiscovered Gems podcast, hosted by NBA legend and business powerhouse Charles D. Smith, highlighting today's best and brightest business minds.
All right. Hey, so welcome to Undiscovered Gems. I'm the host, Charles D. Smith, and today we have a Department of Transportation expert. He's a Diamond of the Year. His name is Matt Freeman. Matt, congratulations on being a Diamond of the Year, and more importantly, congratulations on your podcast series called Safety First. Thank you. Happy to have you here, Matt. How are you today?
Hey, I'm doing well. Hey, just excited to be here. Thanks for having me, and I'm ready to talk some safety.
Yeah, we got a very important topic, with our roadways, highways, and byways. Commercial safety is important. And before we get into talking about that, Matt, why don't you tell us, how did you actually get into this industry?
Oh, wow. I got into this industry 20 years ago now. Back in 2004, started with state government, became a safety investigator for a state I lived in, and then which was Missouri. And then did that for, 2004 to 2012 timeframe. And then I became the hazmat specialist for the state of Missouri in 2008. And then from 8 to 12, I was doing that. Switched over for a short period, got into highway safety, worked with the Click It or Ticket program. That's a national program. Did that for a little bit. And then I went over to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration for a few years. I became the hazmat specialist. One of the 16 in the country did that for a few years. And then, transitions happened, and I got out in the world. I was also a national training instructor for the federal government. So I taught federal agents and troopers around the country on, what they need to do in their day-to-day roadside inspections.
Wow. Can you tell our audience, you use the acronym twice, HAZMAT. What does that stand for?
Yeah, HAZMAT's hazardous materials.
Okay.
So all your fuel going down the road, your propane, trucks, folks like that. Your CO2 guys going down the road.
Yeah, and I remember that was a great national campaign, Click It or Ticket. When you when you mentioned that, that was everywhere. That was a great campaign, because I think it was in every state. Almost.
And they still do it. Yeah. Sure
right. So now, you mentioned hazmat, hazardous materials, and these are commercial trucks. These are the big vehicles, and every now and then we see on the news a very bad accident. Lives are lost. So many things happen out there. Yeah. I have quite a few questions to ask, but with the first one, what are some of the worst accidents you've seen that could have been prevented?
That's a great question. I'll start off with this. Accident's an accident. Now, are there things I've seen where they could have been prevented? Yes. Fatigue driving, for one.
Okay.
If I've seen cases to where if a driver would have got the rest, the accident may not have happened. Okay. Yes. That could have been preventable.
Right.
There's certain things to where, on the hazmat side, depending on if the inspection was done correctly on the cargo tank, okay, and something malfunctions, that could have been prevented. Okay. It also takes the responsibility of the driver, not only the company, but the driver, to do his pre and post trip inspections on a truck, regardless if it's hazmat or if it's just a big box van trailer going down the road, to make sure that it's safe before he goes down the road. That those things could have been potentially been prevented. Some of those, not just an accident, but some of those checks that the driver's responsible for could have prevented him from getting pulled over on the roadside by something that was seen or noticed that could have been prevented. Um,
Mm.
so there's a few different ways you can look at it, from serious accident to just a minor roadside stop by a enforcement officer.
Matt, what about inclement weather? Are there rules and regulations for drivers at a certain amount of inches of snow, freezing temperatures, potential ice, where they should just like not drive and pull over? How does that work?
There are certain things that do come out, and it's usually by the state when it comes to weather, certain circumstances, certain declarations are
Mm,
allowed, like for hours of service, for instance. So when there's an emergency, like for instance, let's say some of the hurricanes we've had in the past, certain states will put out a declaration and allow, like for fuel, for instance, longer hours to get to where they need to be under that declaration. So that there are
mm,
certain times, depending on the type of weather it is, that there are rules that uh, can be accepted, exceed some of the times. It just depends on, all circumstances are really different when it comes to the weather, really.
mm-hmm. Got it. Now, based on your training,
Mhm.
um, you're training individuals. Are you training people already with experience, newbies coming on to the job looking to do the work? Are you across the board with all types of levels of experience? Where does your training begin and end?
No, you said it there at the end. It's all levels. When it comes,
Mm,
so as far as hazmat goes, okay, or hazardous materials, the 49 CFR says that all hazmat employees, by definition, okay, and um, if you meet that definition, you have to have hazmat training. Okay. You have to have your initial training, and you have to have a recurrent training. Okay.
mm,
So you can have a newbie, totally green to the hazmat world, who has to have the training. And you can have the other guys who, been doing it for several years, that they're coming back every 3 years getting a refresher. Uh, we teach all different types of hazmat training. And what I mean is, it all meets the requirements per regulation. Um, but each job is different. So if you are transporting just fuel, everyday fuel, all right, the function part of that is trained on what you're transporting. I'm not going to go talk about propane with you for your function if you're transporting gasoline and diesel. See, so it's very specified on what you need to do. And I'm just using some very common things that are out there. I mean, we can get specifics, but there's a long list of hazardous materials out there. But your daily common stuff, your propanes, fuel, gas. Uh,
mm-hmm.
we train folks now. We also are one of just a very few companies in the entire country that does technician training for registered inspectors. Those guys are the ones who do the inspections on those cargo tanks. You see the numbers on the side of the cargo tanks when you drive by. You'll see these little digits, and they're usually you'll see like a year and V, I, or K. Those are what that training there is, what our company does on an everyday basis. Trains these guys to make sure they're inspecting these vehicles, our tanks,
Nice.
the way they're supposed to be inspected.
You mentioned, the cargoes.
Mhm.
What responsibility does the driver have, um, based on what he's carrying when it's put onto his truck, put in his truck? Yeah, where does his responsibility pick up, and where do the people that are loading it up, what's the difference between the two?
So here's how the responsibility works. So once he picks up his load, okay, at wherever he may be at, uh, once it is moved off of in transit, it is now the carrier's and the driver's responsibility. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so when he leaves a shipper, okay, so a hazmat load is going to go to a shipper, regardless if it's a pipeline to get fuel, wherever it may be. Once he leaves it in his hands to make sure that all the placarding on the tank is there, all the markings are there, everything meets the standards of transporting that vehicle. They are also required to have the shipping papers the emergency response information, and any other details that are required for that load. So it's their responsibility to make sure that they have everything they need to go down the road. So if they ever stop, reason they do that is because it's for emergency responders. If something happens, that driver's got to have, if they can get to the driver, they have to go get the information. It has to be within arm's reach, wherever it is in the vehicle. So usually like the front cubby on the dash or the door, so they can grab it. And all the marking's got to be correct. So you're looking at the placarding, the red and the diamond shaped placards you see on the side of the trucks. It'd say have a number and an ID number there. So the little number at the bottom tells you what type of hazardous material it is, and then the ID number will tell you what it actually is. So your common is going to be like a 1203 you'll see for like gasoline. Those are common ones you see every day. But that's what they need.
Yeah. What is the toughest part of the training? You have, I know you're on all levels when you're training the drivers. What do you see as the toughest part for them to really grasp and understand, or something that you need to really lock into them and say, you really need to understand this? What might that be?
That the toughest thing when it comes to any type of regulation is it's pretty boring. There's a lot of reading there, a lot of regulations. We've learned how to give a lot of examples. We keep them engaged.
Sure.
We give them enough materials for what they're doing. We try to bring in, again, if you're working with gasoline and gasoline, we're going to talk about gasoline. Okay. We're going to keep them engaged on what they do. We're also going to show them other places in the regulations, that things that they need to know. I always tell everybody we try to keep things colorful. We try to keep things going bright. We give you a book here, and we want to make sure that we're not just giving you something that you're just going to go throw in the trash when you walk out the door. We've given you something that we give them a tool that uses value. So when they have a question, that's reference material. We show you how to use the regulations. So that's how we do it. We keep them engaged, especially when to answer your question, is when it's a tough subject. Nobody wants to sit through that. Training's brutal. It really is. But we have managed to make it entertaining and enjoyable for our students. And we let them know right up front, hey, there's a lot of stuff here, guys. And when it comes to regulations, we try to explain it as best as we can, and be engaging. Don't be afraid to ask us questions.
Right.
Because a lot of times the guy next to you has probably got the same question that he's just not asking it either. So.
Mm-hmm. Why do you say training is so brutal? Is it the hours, the demand on the potential drivers? What makes it brutal?
Folks don't want to be in there. They'd rather be out in the field, driving their trucks, working in the shops. They don't want to sit through a class. That's the brutal part about it. But then you have on the other half, you got the folks in there that want to be there. They want to learn something new. Because when we come in and we teach you the new rules that have changed, what's coming up, what not to do. And I guess the worst case is you got the guy, you always ask, the boss made me come.
Oh, yeah.
That
really does.
Then it's brutal, but 90% of the time, the guy that said the boss made me come, he's the guy at the end of the class shaking your hand going, wow, I actually learned something. This is really cool. Thank you so much. And that's what we try to get.
Yeah, that happens a lot. When you're out on the road, and I don't know how much you train the drivers for this, but it's a lot of times I might be behind someone. It could be intimidating, especially at night when you're driving past a truck. The worst thing is when it's a 2-lane highway, right? Mm-hmm. How do you train? Do the drivers ever think or look in their rear view or on the side and they can tell this car is a little skittish, this car is nervous, I gotta watch them? Do you train them that way?
I teach drivers when I work with drivers and technicians, and that's not always drivers, but on the driver's side, they need to be aware of their surroundings just as much as that truck or small car that's passing them. Mm-hmm. because there's a lot of blind spots there. As you've probably seen, I've experienced getting behind a truck and all of a sudden he's swerving over on me because he doesn't see me in his blind spot.
Right,
You know,
exactly.
I always tell them, remember, you're riding in a 80,000-pound vehicle, and
Yeah.
it's not always the big rig's fault. It's not always the car next to him's fault. But you just got to be careful. If you're on a 2-lane highway and it's narrow, you're going to be. I hope that they would be a lot more cautious, because you're going to get folks who they want to pass them. No one wants to be on a 2-lane road. Everybody wants to go around.
Find that gap and go right by the truck.
That's right. Hey, I got an opening and I'm going to take it.
Right.
They need to be cautious with it, and even on a major highway. There's times when they're going up an incline and they're slowing way down, so they're getting over out of the way. So there's certain rules they have to follow, and depending on the states, they got speed rules, for trucks, so they're only allowed them to go so fast. So the drivers do have a lot of responsibility, and again, it's knowing your surroundings. That's from the speed, the weather, the drivers, the conditions of everything around you. I mean, you can't preach it enough, and I always preach, and I don't preach, I teach. I always talk to these guys, don't get complacent. Again, that's where you want to be aware of your surroundings. Don't get used to something always being there, because at one time you go by that spot, it may not be there, and that's when an accident can happen. So always be aware and don't get complacent. Don't get used to certain things.
Yeah, and the way I think about it is, how can you get complacent when you're carrying hazardous products? I mean, to me, you just can't. You can't ever be complacent.
Right.
Now, what type of background do you need to have, or what is your background to be able to do this training? Mm-hmm. What educational background did you need to get?
Well, I come from a long line of enforcement, multiple weeks of training, in the DOT world, with enforcement, US DOT, state enforcement. If you're going to get into this, you want to have some type of, and you don't have to come from enforcement. There's a lot of industry experts out there who are very knowledgeable with the regulations and, and safety. So like my team, I got both, industry and a retired enforcement on my team, including myself. So, I would say you'd want to be, key thing, knowledgeable in what you're looking at, what you're teaching, know this stuff, because when you get out there in these regulations, people will know if you don't know what you're talking about. It's, you need to know the subject. And there's industry guys out there, they might know diesel or propane, and that's all they know, and they're very, very good at it, but they know nothing else about another type of chemical. And so, I would recommend stay focused on what you know. Nothing wrong with learning new, because we learn new stuff all the time. Every time I go out to a customer, we learn something. It only makes us better on, we ought to add that, or that's how we've gotten so good. It's because they've recommended things to us, But yeah, that would be my best advice to someone who wants to get into the field, or work under somebody who it can be a mentor, and educate yourself on it.
You just made me think, being a former professional athlete, what is the next maturation of your career if you want to have employment? Some going to coaches, and some going television. So you have drivers now that have been driving hazmat for 15, 20 years. Mm-hmm. Do they go into training? What are some of the careers and things that they do after they finish driving? They're tired of being on the road, away from their families. What are some of the things they get into?
Oh, that's a great question as well. So from my experience, we work with a lot of global and enterprise companies who are very large, and we're talking hundreds and thousands of drivers and some of these guys. Yeah. And so what I've seen with that is their passion of driving has moved them up the ranks. And some of these guys now that start out as a driver are safety, managers, directors. I even met some customers who they're up in the VP range of maintenance or their DOT work because they started as a driver. The passion never left them. They just want to continue to help, and as the company grew them, that's where they became.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of opportunity, and again, it depends on the companies you work with. I just talked about a few large companies. I can say from experience that I know the folks I work with on a daily started out as a driver. Now they've been managers and worked their way through the field in different areas of their jobs and stuff. So there is it's sky's the limit in the field you're in. Really, this one is. It's a very unique field because nobody knows transportation or enforcement unless you're in that world. You tell someone you work with the DOT and no one like, well, what's that? Well, you see it every day, so it's one of those things. So you always had to explain yourself, what you did. And, oh, wow, that's very interesting.
Yeah, exactly. What are some of the downsides to the careers? Are there any mental health issues for the drivers? Because I'm thinking that's a long time on the road by yourself in a rig. Your hours and hours up and down, East Coast, West Coast. Are there any, do they work a week on, a week off? I got a lot of questions around the timing, how long they on the road at one time. Are there mental health issues? Take any of those because I'm very curious.
Yeah, no. So I'll start off with this and then I'll go into the hours. All interstate drivers, CDL, commercial motor vehicles, okay, or non-CDL commercial motor vehicles, okay. Anything that's over 10,001 gross vehicle weight rating on that vehicle, and it's in interstate commerce, okay, or if it's over 26,001, then you have to have a CDL, okay. They have to have a medical card, okay. So there are physical requirements for the job.
Oh wow! Okay.
So they have to have a medical card and they have to pass the medical exam to be a driver. Okay. So depending on the state you're with, now they're all the medical cards are connected to the CDL. So once you get it, the CDL shows you have a medical card. Now your non-CDL drivers or in commercial vehicles, they carry their medical card with them. They're required to have that with them at all times. Okay, kind of like an insurance card. They have to have their medical card. Okay. So as far as the hours go, so yeah, we talk about hours. All commercial drivers, they have what they call a 60-hour rule and a 70-hour rule. Okay, that's the amount of time they can drive in a week. All right, so if you're on a 60-hour rule, that's 60 hours in 7 days. And the 70-hour rule is 70-hour rules, 70 hours in 8 days. Okay, so they have a time frame. They're also limited to drive a certain amount of time per day before they have to take a 10-hour break. So they get a max of 11 hours drive time. Okay, and then they have to take a 10-hour break before they can come back and start over. Okay, so there are requirements when they're doing long hauls across country or whatever. And with the physical aspects, is there health issues? There's a lot. There's a lot of stuff that goes on out there. All you're doing is driving. You're probably not eating the best. You're getting a lot of fast food, and some people that works for it, a lot that don't. So there's a lot of health risks there, but there's some guys out there really do take care of themselves. So it's just everybody's different on it.
Right. What's sort of the training that they have to go through to become a driver and to maintain it? What are some of the things they need to do?
Sure. So on the
physical training, I'm referring to physical training.
Yeah. So some of the training that they need to do is in order to get a CDL, you gotta go to your DMV to take the test to get a CDL. But a lot of these drivers, a couple of things they'll do. You go to a school, learn how to drive. Okay. Get your CDL. Some companies would rather bring you in and they train you themselves. So they'll put you through the program. And then once you get in, then you're with the driver. Once you get your CDL, you got to go with someone else that has a CDL for so many months. So it's a lot of OJT, on the job, literally on the job training with somebody else, or they go to a school to do it.
Right. What is when you look at your career path, were you a driver also,
No,
Matt?
never
Okay,
had.
so when you look at your career path, how is it that if you're not a driver and you're training a lot of guys to drive, how do you incorporate that? Do they ask you questions? Are you challenged because you weren't a driver? How does that work?
I have been. So a little bit about my background is my other side of my family were truck drivers.
Ah,
My grandfather drove a truck. My other grandfather drove a truck. My uncles, my cousins. So in my family, they either went in the military, law enforcement, federal or state or local, or they drove trucks. Not much of a mix where
right.
my family grew up. But so I can relate. You know,
Of course.
I was a black sheep of my family, and I'd go to a family reunion. Here I am, the DOT enforcement guy, and they're all truck drivers. So we always had a lot of fun with one another. And I was like, don't worry about it. People go, oh, I'm not saying that around you. I'm like,
Right.
So, but
Hey,
so when I would go in, I would relate to drivers, and I said, hey guys, I understand the rules, and there's a lot of information here. I have family who drive these trucks, and I want to make sure they're following the rules as well. The rules
right.
are there for a reason.
Right.
Everybody may not like them, but they're still rules. It's like the speed limit. The speed limit set at 65, 70 mile an hour, whatever it is. It's that way for a reason. So
Right.
you or I can't change those rules, but so you still got to follow them. And if you don't, well, what happens? You get a ticket. Same thing on the safety side. If they're not doing the inspections they're required to do on a daily basis of these trucks, they're not taking care of maintaining them. Well, then roadsides are going to stop you. They're going to do a roadside inspection. They're going to find defects, and then what happens? Now your trucks is possibly down. Money's time. Time is money. If they're not running, they're not making no money. So I always tell folks, hey, the better you maintain your vehicle and your trailer, the longer you're going to be out there to keep on moving, because nobody wants to be on downtime. So
Sure. And that definitely was not a knock on you because you weren't a driver. I played for many coaches that never played the game, and they're great coaches. So just to make that statement. But 30 seconds, Matt, what do you want to tell the audience? What do they need to know about DOT Department of Training?
So in my world, you can never have enough training. You can always better yourself by more training, no matter what it is, especially in the driver world, the transportation world. Rules and regulations change on a regular basis. And the only way sometimes the changes have been made is by going through the training. And it's all about safety.
Right.
My family, your family, our friends drive these roads every day. And I could never live with myself if I let something go down the highway or I missed a detail that caused an accident. So it's always important to have, and training helps prevent that.
Yeah.
It's and training goes back to safety.
Mm-hmm.
So be safe. These rigs out there, again, they're 80,000 pounds, and when they hit something going slow or fast, it'll do damage.
Right.
And regardless if it's by itself or if it's, something else involved. So I always say, remember that. Again, I'm pretty passionate on that side of it, but we try to train drivers in industry to follow the rules, and we're there to help keep up with what they need to know.
Right. Well, Matt, I really enjoyed this conversation today. Thank you for being the expert that you are, keeping our roadways safe with your training at the Department of Transportation. Congratulations again on being a Diamond Decade expert in your field, and very informative. I'm sure a lot of people got a lot out of it, and they will continue to get a lot out of your advice today. So thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you for having me. It's been great. Big pleasure. Thank you.
Great. Take care, Matt.
All right. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Undiscovered Gems with our host, Charles D. Smith, highlighting today's best and brightest business minds. Brought to you by Pods Entertainment Group.
Hi, this is Terry Crews, actor, former football player, game show host, father of 5, and all-around big dude. I'm also an expert on drama. I know all kinds of drama. There's the good kind that comes with having a house full of kids. There's the bad kind like season-ending injuries. There's the necessary kind like having an agent in Hollywood. And there's silly drama like the drama around my percolating pectorals. And then there's the drama you can skip.
Skip the drama that comes with not having your high school diploma or equivalency. Find free adult education classes near you and finish your high school diploma. Visit finishyourdiploma.org.
Or text diploma to 97779. Message and data rates may apply. Reply stop to opt out. That's diploma to 97779. And leave the drama to actors like me.
Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.